Hello, this is Christopher Kennedy and welcome again to the Visual Effects Compositing course. We're coming a long way with this now, but we're getting to the point where we need to add the sparks to show that an explosion is happening up here, causing this grill to fall down. The shot is very short, it's only 4.5 seconds long from beginning to end. So after a second, we need something to start happening. It's around there that the sparks should kick in, because 1 second later, the grill is falling down and then the shot's on the way to the end. Any sooner than a second and we haven't really given people a chance to look up and see what's there. Any later and we're getting too close to the point where the grill falls. Soon we're going to need the spark 1 TIFF, so drag that from here into the timeline and switch off its visibility. So let's start creating some sparks. I'm going to turn off most of the layer's visibility, of course, so that I can see what I'm doing. We're going to create sparks that look a little like they're coming from an angle grinder. Just create a new solid here, sparks 1. The idea is that they're going to fizz and jet out rather than just dripping or exploding. So we'll apply CC Particle World, recolor the layer, and drag it up to this 1 second mark, so that the sparks are starting at that point. Select the effect up here, then go to the producer. As before, we're going to use these position controls to set this up on one of the edges here. I think we'll go with the forward edge first, on the corner. And we'll just check that that stays at the corner till about the 2 second mark. It's not quite right, so I'm going to adjust the Y position, see if that works better. And that's much more accurate now. Just reposition ever so slightly and that should be right. Now the sparks that come out of here by default are no use to us at all, they look terrible. We'll just zoom in so that we can see what we're doing, and then we'll change the look of these sparks. Under particle, change particle type to textured quad polygon. And then you need to go to the texture here, unfill that, and under texture layer, choose the sparks 1 TIFF down here. And then you can see that that spark is jetting out from there. Still not the way we want it. We'll close up particle, go to physics, and under there we change animation from explosive to fractal uni. We still need more velocity here. These particles are just sort of drifting out. So under velocity, turn that right up to, let's turn that up to 3 for now, and we'll turn the birth rate up as well up here so that we've got a lot of particles. So they're jetting out quite fast now, which is better, but we need them to burn out quickly. So I'm going to take the longevity here and pull that right down so that they're disappearing almost as soon as they appear. And this is going to give us that angle grinder look of sparks just fizzing in and out of existence. You can see that there. Now I want it to look as though there are sparks at each corner of this and behind the grill as well. So now that I can see these, I'm just going to adjust the position even more to get it exactly where I want it. That looks about right. Now I want to change the direction. So under direction axis, which is in the physics section, I'm going to move the x-axis like that, the y-axis as well, and the z-axis I could use to make the particles point towards me or away from me. I'll have them just going across like that. And now I'm going to push the velocity up a little more and the birth rate a little more and see what we get there. And that's a really good feeling of these particles blasting away from that point. Around the 2 second mark is where the new layer begins, where we see the grill fall away. So I'm just going to split the clip here and delete the second half, like that. So now we just have those sparks for that one section. Now I can animate some of the properties through the clip as well, rather than just leaving it the same. So let's select that clip, I'll go to birth rate, keyframe that, keyframe the velocity. I think that will do for now, and then we'll move to the halfway point, push the birth rate up a little, push the velocity up, then I'll move to about 3/4 of the way through the clip, and then I'll pull that birth rate down and pull the velocity down. And that's just going to create a little bit of a feeling of change going on in there. Rather than it looking too CG, it should feel like there's some variation. These still don't look like sparks, of course, but don't worry, we'll render them out and blur them, and then they should begin to look a little more interesting. Now duplicate this layer. We'll name this one Sparks 2, and all we do is select that, go up to the filter here, select Producer, and then we reposition this one at a different corner. That's fairly easy, but of course it's going to be looking exactly the same as the other unless we change some direction and so on. I might even change the X radius here, just widen these particles a little. Then under Physics, going to choose the direction axis and change this so that they're coming across the image more like that. I think that looks quite good. And I'm probably going to want to move these keyframes as well, so I'll just hit E and look under the effect down here. Find those birth rate keyframes. I'm just going to swap some of these around. Then under the Physics, I'll move the velocity keyframes around. And that just ensures that both clips look different. We have different looking sparks at those 2 points. So I'll duplicate this again. That gives us Sparks 3. It's named automatically now. After Effects has got the idea. And this one we'll reposition in exactly the same way. Push this down into the back corner over here. And then use the direction axis to turn this in a more interesting way. It might be an idea to have them cross each other like this. And of course I should go in and move those keyframes again. Or what I could do instead of just moving the keyframes is delete them and put in completely new values so that we have something very different here. So I'll push the birth rate right up there, keyframe it, move to the end of the clip and drag that down a little there. Duplicate this again. Now move this off into the far corner over here. We could at this point choose to have these point down and away from the rest, but I think having them focused up here with the grill gives this feeling of work going on there, as though whatever bomb or device has been attached to the grill is working on the metal and is causing the sparks because it's melting the grill away. So I'm going to stick with that. Just have a look at how that looks. That's pretty good. Now I'm going to create one more layer to go in the far background. So I'll just duplicate this one more time. Sparks 5. Select the producer position and move this somewhere towards the middle like that. Make the other layers invisible while I do this. And then under its Physics, I'll go to the direction axis. I'll bring this across like that. And I think I'll widen the radius up here. The Y radius and the X radius right across like that. And maybe even the Z. And that gives us some very deep sparks in the background. Now we need to render these out. But if we render them all together, it'll become a bit of a mess. So I'm just going to render 1 to 4 first. So I select those, solo them, and then render. And then I re-import that, called Sparks Output, and just drag this into the timeline to have a look at it. I'm going to de-solo everything here. We can change its blending mode to Add. And now we're going to add the pixel motion blur, which really brings this to life. And then we'll add a glow. And then I like to turn the glow threshold down, the radius up, and the intensity up a little. Now those sparks look much better. We'll do the same for Sparks 5. I'll solo it and render. Bring that back in as Sparks Lower. And then I'll de-solo Sparks 5 here. Drag Sparks Lower in to the composition and make sure it goes behind these Cinema 4D layers here. Now we'll switch everything back on so we can see how this looks when it's all together. And of course we need to change the blending mode to Add. And once again, with Sparks Lower, we can apply pixel motion blur and a glow. And similar sort of settings to before, we're trying to make this really glow in the background. Now, if you find when you play through this that the sparks don't look as smooth as you want them to, you can turn up the pixel blur settings, and I find that's often a really good thing to do. So I'm going to do that now. Just go here to the shutter samples and change that to 10. It does make rendering slower, but it makes for a much more smooth motion blur. And of course, just make sure you've turned off the original sparks layers here. So now we have the sparks appear and then they disappear just as the grill begins to fall down. So that works well for the angle grinder type sparks that are appearing where the grill is being melted, but we also need some sparks to fall away, and we need a flash of light over this to hide the transition between the two effects there. So we'll look at that in the next lesson.